Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to a very festive episode of the Legendary Ladies podcast. Morgan is out this week, so you get Kat and I here to discuss a Hallmark Christmas movie called A Friends and Family Christmas, which
The
is
most
a
generic
movie
name.
that we watched.
I do want to want to comment. We have some patrons listening, and if you guys want to become a patron, you can listen to this live. A lot of times we'll double record as well, so you get some episodes in advance. And Danny says this is traditionally gay as hell. That's something we'll definitely talk about. Is
Yeah.
obviously this movie. If you guys don't know, Friends and Family Christmas, it's the first full-on lesbian movie for Hallmark. They've done a gay movie and they've done like queer characters in movies, but this is the first time that's like two leads are gay on Hallmark. So that's also why we're covering it.
And two leads who are not necessarily the story around the film is not them coming out to their family,
Sure.
or like these are two characters who are well established as lesbians, dating lesbians, having broken up with them. Like this is an established character trait for these characters, which is also something that tends to be unique in films, in queer films in general. I feel like a lot of times, especially when a movie's trying to make its mark in that sort of a field, a lot of times it ends up being a coming out story. And so this one was very different. This was very well established. But here's the thing. Y'all are going to have a hard time finding this film online. That's okay. You can watch it on I almost said pheasant on Peacock.
It's a great new streaming service.
on
Parodies of
you can
all
watch it on
NBC shows.
pheasant. Ridiculous. So, yeah, apologies for that. But that's okay. You don't need to watch this film to understand this film. Just put ye old holiday Hallmark Christmas movie into a an online AI and you'll get this movie. Like literally this movie was written by AI badly, like unedited AI. Um I don't have a lot of good things to say about this film.
But
So
also, are you? Let's rewind for a second. Do you like Hallmark movies?
I think I don't watch a lot of
Do
them.
you think you like
I
the idea of them?
No. I don't dislike them. I think they're really good to watch in the background while you're getting your hair done or your nails done or you're waiting in line at Target and they're playing it on one of the fake TVs that they have on display. Like I get that they're good background noise, so to speak, but I guess I feel like I've got so much media that I want to consume that I don't have the energy to put something into, put energy into something that maybe is not going to be quote worth my time. And that sounds really snobbish, but genuinely, for especially Morgan, Kat, and I, we are all crazy busy. Kat's busy running 55 Kickstarters. I work literally 2 jobs and do theater. And Morgan has these cats, and I don't know if you guys know, but her cats are insane. The best thing
And they're
ever.
always causing
Um,
trouble every week.
they're
They
always
have
causing
them. They're
trouble.
keeping themselves busy.
So generally, like, yeah, I enjoy meet cute. I enjoy cutesy cute. But it has to be good meet cute. It has to be good Hallmark
Just
things.
have some
There was
substance.
Yes, and this really didn't, and we're gonna get into all the things that didn't hit the mark for me. But what about you? Are you a Hallmark Christmas movie watcher?
I wish you were on the top 5 Christmas movies list because I had so little Christmas movies, so don't really genuinely like Christmas movies that much. That I was like, is this a Christmas movie? I guess. And then like my 5 and 4 were like, I guess I like these. But my mom's a big Hallmark fan. She like all year round watches Hallmark. It's all she loves,
Really?
reality television and Hallmark. It's what she really, really, really likes. And she even taped this one. She's like, "Oh, Kat, I thought we'd watch it together." And I was like, normally I would say yes, but I had just started watching for this podcast because she knew I'm sure she knew I'd be interested in it. But it's interesting because I watched one of the other Hallmark movies, Love Connection, I want to say, because it was like the first lesbian relationship, but they weren't main characters. I think there was like a trio of characters. There was like a brother, a mom, and the character who ends up being queer, who's played by the person who played Oliver Queen's daughter in Arrow. And I remember being pleasantly whoever played, I don't, a cat something, the actress is. And she
I
ends
know what
up,
you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's that movie, and I watched it just to see what it was all about, and I genuinely thought it was better than I expected. I was like, oh, there's like a bit of a story. There's three different characters, so there's a little bit of nuance. I was like, maybe I've been given Hallmark, a hard time.
Bad rep.
Yeah, bad rep. I was like, maybe Hallmark's not that bad. And then I watched this. I'm like, oh, that was just a fluke. This is exactly what Hallmark movies are. And yeah, I don't tend to like them very much. I like a little bit more depth in my films, liking Hallmark is totally cool. I think sometimes you do want to just shut off your brain and
Mhm.
enjoy something that's not complicated, especially a queer story that's not complicated, not coming out. I think this is for someone, and I think it's actually for a lot of people. I just think you sadly got two people it wasn't for.
It's interesting that you say that, an uncomplicated queer story, because that's a really powerful statement, because we think about, like, a couple years ago we watched Happiest Season, and we were really digging into the coming out story, and was it challenging, was it not, was it accurate, was it not? And it was nice to watch this film and to not have the queer aspect of the story be the main crux of the story. Like, that was not the point of the story. We've always talked about how it's nice to have queer characters where they are just in a relationship doing relationshipy things and they happen to be queer, because that's real life. And so in that way, this did represent well. It was real life. The parents, they understood. They were, oh, yep, we're gonna get our daughters together, which was kind of cute. The parents were arguably the most interesting part of the story, and they weren't even that interesting. But it is, from my perspective, it did at least feel like there was a level of normality to this queer aspect of the film, and I do really appreciate that. And I hope that other people who watched this film also appreciated that. Did you?
Yeah, I definitely appreciated it. Like I liked that we're here, right? There's so much conversation about Hallmark not showing queer characters at all, and to get to this point, it's a big deal. So this is a huge movie, and I'm glad Hallmark has gone this direction. And I know there's complicated history with all of it, but I'm very happy that we're in this place, and more people, like, again, like people like my mom, or people my mom's age, can enjoy it and be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
cool, like this is just like any other couple. And I think it's great representation. And yeah, and it shows there's great movies that are queer, that talks about queerness, but not every love story with queer people have to talk about the politics of queerness.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, I just wish it were better,
Yeah,
because
so let's get into that.
when you were talking about Hallmark films and how there are a lot of people that really like it, I have seen some Hallmark films that really hit you in the gut. And to me, I think of Hallmark in two ways. I think of Hallmark films as Christmas films, or films that are going to make you cry, like sob your guts out. Like, for
Really,
what?
I've never
Yes,
thought of Hallmark being
for me,
that.
Hallmark is like, it is the story that you're going to watch that just make you feel overwhelmed by emotion. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not what it is, but I think that the thing that Hallmark tries to share and tries to bring home is the concept of honesty in their storytelling. Hallmark wants to tell real life stories. The idea of real meet cutes, or real characters going through real issues, or family issues, friends issues, all this drama that ultimately, to an extent, has, I think, for the most part, a happy ending. But for a Hallmark movie to sell as a good film, there needs to be honesty in the storytelling. And there was almost no honesty in this film
Well,
at
there's
all.
no
And by
character work,
there was no
you know?
character. Yeah,
Yeah.
by honesty, I mean that there needs to be a level of truth in something that you're telling. There was nothing in the location, the setting, the characters, the story,
Did you feel like it
the
was New
character
York?
relationships. They weren't even in like, it was like they were in
They
quote New York
they
with
were in New York,
redwood
but they
trees.
yeah, that you could
Like, you
very much tell they were in Canada. Why not just say you're in Canada
yeah,
at that
their
point?
conflicts, the entire, like, anytime they tried to create a drama situation for the characters, there was no truth in it. She was like, I'm having so much trouble with my career, and then she it,
She
it
gets a
doesn't really
show like 5
explain
minutes in.
that.
Yeah,
It's
and yeah,
ugh.
go on.
But that was my problem. Like more than once, I just wrote down where's the honesty, and a lot of that comes with a poor script with poor conflicts and stakes with, I'm sorry, poor acting. Um, and I if they could just stop fake laughing all the time. The fake laughing started to really drive me nuts. So there was a shocking level of, in my opinion, disinterest in this film. It felt like no one cared that they were making this. It felt like there was very little work that anyone put into it on any level, and it just frustrated me because it really shouldn't have been that bad. And we can talk about specifics, but that's my kind of initial thought on the film, is that I just felt like there was that this, like I have seen community theater youth productions that had more honesty and truth than this movie did.
They're not working on the best script either because
No.
again, the main character is, just to give you a little gist if you have not seen this movie, maybe we should have said this 10 minutes ago, but the main character is a photographer, and then we have a lawyer, and their parents know each other, and they're like, all right, we're going to meet up for some coffee, and then they end up being fake girlfriends for some reason. That's kind of a nonsensical reason why they become fake girlfriends.
To impress her parents, who have already expressed that they don't care. Like they
Yeah.
literally don't care that she doesn't have a girlfriend, and
And she needs
somehow they have to
and
fake it.
she needs to go to this Christmas party, the other girl, to
Yeah.
for some reason she just wants a plus one. It's actually not the biggest deal in the world that she doesn't have a plus one. And also her dad's there. Like I can almost understand if she's needs a plus one because she doesn't like any of her coworkers, but it seems like she has people to talk to at this
And like,
party.
so you've got Amelia and you've got Danielle, and Danielle's parents, she calls them and says, I can't come home for Christmas. I need to stay in town to work on this Christmas event that I'm doing for my art school, which is a legitimate reason. And her parents are like, oh, that's okay. We'll miss you, but that's okay. They hang up the phone.
And
There was no
her mom's a writer, so they like you'd also
yeah,
think the conflict would be like, "Oh, you're doing art and you're failing." She's like,
yeah.
"I do art too, and so I get it." And
And
she's
I think they
successful in it.
tried to play that up. It was just like, and all of a sudden the parents are like, oh my God, we're going to go surprise her. And she's like, oh no, my parents think I'm a failure. I'm like, no, they don't. Nothing about anything we've seen has made it seem like the parents think she's a failure. I didn't get any of the conflicts in the story at all at any point.
And they like each other from the beginning. It feels like that's honestly an issue where I almost kind of wish it was an enemies to lover situation where like, ah, we have to date. Because then there's a little something there. Because
Yeah.
honestly, the first coffee date feels like a first coffee date. And then
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing, it feels like they're dating. It doesn't, first of all, they've only known each other for a few days, so you do not need to say you're girlfriends with each other. It literally just seems like
Agreed.
you're getting to know each other like a regular human being. So it's just like, yeah, you're dating, but you
I,
haven't done anything to make
I
it fake, you know?
I wrote that down. So I wrote sticky notes, and those of you who've been with this podcast for a long time, you know that I occasionally do sticky notes, especially when it's really bad. And I was like, oh my God, after one date, they're calling each other hun and babe. Like they feel like that's
Right.
how you have to fake date after one date. All you have to do is be like, yeah, I texted her last week, and boom, that's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, no, it's just a weird it felt very fake. And then I want to talk about the title for a second because it's called Friends and Family Christmas. And they kind of have friends around, but not really. There's this random roommate who's there and really has no arc by any means, besides he's there for 5 minutes. And then there is this other girl who wants to get her book sold and is trying to get the main character's
Kylie, I
mom to
think.
read it. And then there's another
She's,
friend who knows it all, but I kind of forgot about her throughout the film
yeah. No, Kylie apparently was seemed like the most interesting character in the whole film.
because she
Like,
dated the ex of blonde girl.
yeah. And she actually had a plot. I do this thing, but I'm really interested in this thing. Will your mom read my manuscript? And literally they even have a section of her mom reading the manuscript being like, "Wow, there's something in here." and you never get follow-up. It's
It's
like they
like
threw that
500
in
pages
there.
long. I don't know how
Yeah.
there's something in there, but or why and she read it because it looked very long.
I think it's single-sided though.
I
But
hope so, but even so, that seemed like it
yeah,
it was a lot for a stranger to read.
I think there were so many aspects of that that were just really frustrating to me, from a character point of view, and I think that that's something that you and I especially are a little bit more in tune to,
Mhm.
is that if you're gonna have a character and you want your character to grow, there needs to be some sort of conflict or some sort of challenge for that character to overcome. And it felt like they kept trying to fabricate challenges. Like at one point, they're at the karaoke dinner, right? And Kylie brings up, "Oh, I accidentally dated your ex girlfriend."
Sure,
That has
conflict.
the potential to be a really big deal. But you know what? The girl says instead? She says, "I just don't fit in with this crowd," and walks out. That's what she says. She says, "I don't fit in with this crowd," after we brought up the fact that her, the trauma of what she was going through with her
The ex we
ex.
never see. We just talk about this Margot, I wanna
Margot.
say her name was. Yeah, because they've mentioned it so many times. They just talk about her, and also you don't know, like, why the relationship really ended besides that she didn't really know her. She's moving to Hollywood? That's crazy. I'm like, it seems like you were together for a long time. You probably know why she's moving to Hollywood. It just felt that even that felt very stilted. We do have some comments from Danny, so I'm going to read them. I will forever say the Happiest Season is not a holiday movie. It was a coming out movie. Also, no one died in this movie, so that was good. And Danny also says, really like high powered lawyer who leaves their six-figure job to marry a tree farmer in Nowheresville. That's a fun one. I think that's a fun trope. And then also, yes, except in lesbian relationships, they bring the U-Haul to the second date. Honestly, maybe yes, that was probably the only thing that was relatable in this movie that they're trying to do. There was something I'm trying to remember like the lesbian thing they mentioned in this movie. I think it was like moving fast. I don't remember, but there was like a joke that you could tell the writer was queer in some way because they like talked about like a queer trope of some sort. But I don't remember what that trope was because there's so much essence in this movie to remember. But I guess talking about the pacing of this movie, because that was something I
Yeah.
really had an issue with, is it felt very long. It just felt like it just wasn't going anywhere for the whole movie. And maybe because again, you didn't enjoy the character arc, so it's harder to kind of like go through something
Yeah.
like a movie like this if you're not enjoying the characters. But it took me like 2 days to watch this movie because I kept pausing it and was like, oh, okay, I'll do something else, or like I'll watch 10 minutes. I'm gonna do something else now. It just didn't keep my attention.
I was 0% invested in any part of this film. I actually wrote that down. Literally, the only time that I started to get marginally invested was towards the very, very, very end when Danielle wants to surprise her at um
For
at
five
Central
minutes,
Park.
this is not a
Yeah, literally
long scene.
it was ridiculous because and it was kind of cute at first. I was like, "Oh, she's putting up photos of her and then she's going to find her and she's going to say something." And but literally I wrote it down. Danielle says, "You know what? I'm sorry, but let's just get straight to the point." And I was like, "We've been here for 10 minutes." And now you want to get straight to the point? Like nothing about this was well paced. And this is just an actor thing slash a director thing slash an intimacy coordinator thing. The kiss was so bad. The kiss was so they missed. They missed each other's lips. They bumped each other's faces and no one on the creative team was like, "Cut. Let's try shooting that again. Let's maybe rehearse a little bit. Let's aim properly." That actually like I know it's weird, but that really frustrates me.
There's 2 kisses too. There was the main kiss and then there was the last kiss that you kinda get. But,
Yeah.
I was actually surprised by that because I didn't expect usually you get the one grand finale, and then I was surprised we got another kiss. But yeah, no, but also I just thought I didn't I felt like the kiss didn't work because also I just didn't care about the characters.
And there was no chemistry. There
Yeah.
was there was no chemistry. They were trying so hard. They were trying so hard to work with a script that was just not great. And
Because that's the
I
problem too.
yeah.
It's not a great script, so how do you work on that when it's not?
Mhm.
And also you're pretending you're in New York when you're very, very much in Canada.
You're very clearly not in New York. I was telling Kat before we recorded, there's actually a moment where the grating on the ground on the cement is fake. And so there you can see the grating move when characters are walking on it. And there's actually a moment where the mom slips on it and because the grating moves. And so the whole thing moves and she looks down like, "Oh my goodness, I just slipped on this immovable object." And again, no one bothered to be like, "Oh, cut. Can we, I don't know, take that again where it's not obvious that the mother's like, "Hey, look, I'm in a movie." So I think that was probably the most challenging part for me. Also, I just brought in a Christmas tree to my house. If those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is a
Not
decently
real?
sized tree. It is a real tree.
Okay.
It is a 5.5 foot noble fir. It was on clearance. What you cannot see is that the backside has a pretty big gaping hole. But I'm
That's okay.
poor, so I got the clearance noble fir. Here's the thing. I brought it up my stairs to my second story apartment in with one hand. Moving a Christmas tree is not that hard. So the fact that it took four of them to move the tree inside with how hard they were faking how heavy this tree was, I was genuinely dying of laughter because I literally just moved this tree in like yesterday. I was like, this took me no effort at all. And yet she's like, "All right, everybody, yeah, the tree. Oh, we got to get it up the stairs." And it just cracked me up.
Because
And
they
so
live
that
in New
was
York.
because they
They
live
got
in New
all those
York and she
stairs.
could totally afford to live in that apartment, which would have been easily $6,000 to $7,000 a month. No
Oh,
way
one
she was afford. Oh,
100%.
okay,
They like
maybe maybe her mom could
no, go
afford it,
on.
which would have been an interesting story. What if her
It
mom
could
can
have
afford
been.
it and is putting her up in New York because her mom's a famous author. Her
Well, now
mom's
she
putting
has
her up in New
a lawyer
York.
girlfriend, so
Yeah. Well, now she can afford it. But that would have been a much more interesting story. Maybe the mom's disappointment stems from the fact that she's put all these quote resources into
but the
her
mom's not
kid
even
and she's
disappointed.
not seeing anything. And the mom's not disappointed. Is it bad that I literally was like, I kind of wish this mom would cut her off? Like, I wish these parents were meaner because then maybe there would be some sort of realism and
See,
honesty and conflict.
I think that's harder because it is like a happy queer story. So I think if we are going to have conflict, I'd rather it be within the relationship that doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
Two strangers meeting each other and trying to get to know each other, there's going to be conflict. So that would have been nicer. The parents, I do think they were a little bit too perfect, but against a Hallmark movie. But I think them having conflict, like we've seen that a billion times. That's what Happiest Season was. Like, oh, there's
Yeah.
conflict with the parents. So I'm like, I don't know if I needed to see that. But sure,
Yeah.
maybe the money situation maybe would have been interesting if the daughter was like, well, I don't want to take my mom's money to live in this New
Mm-hmm.
York apartment. I want to like try doing it on my own. And mom's like, no, take the money. I don't care. And she's like, no, I want to do this myself. And then she realizes she can't afford New York because she wouldn't be able to if she's selling nothing. And I mean, she has a job. I
Did she?
that's the cop because I think with that woman, right? Like that the woman that she's talking. Maybe I missed something, but the woman she's talking to, the older woman, I thought that was her boss. Maybe it's not.
I think it's like an artist studio. I think it's like her mentor or teacher, so
Oh,
to speak. I think that they sound to me like they're students or artists in residence at
okay.
this
Studio.
facility. Yeah.
That
So
confused me because I just saw her
yeah.
going somewhere. I'm like, that's her job. That
Yeah.
must be where she works. And then there's another person that's
Everything
there also
confused
doing
me.
the same thing. So you're like, oh, she's
Yeah.
also a coworker.
Yeah. Everything about this film confused me. Is it bad that at one point I was like, can there just be an unlikable character? Like we don't have a villain. And now that I think about it, we don't. There was no
There's
villain.
no there's no conflict. Well, I think the
Antagonist.
conflict is the idea they had to be fake girlfriends, but again, that feels very, very loose to me. But yeah, there was no villain at all. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess the photographer woman could have been a villain, but now I learned she was a mentor, so I guess
Yeah.
she wouldn't have been a villain. No, I mean, I think that was definitely the issue, but I don't. I think the issue also for me personally is that I don't watch enough Hallmark movies to know if this is the
Hmm.
standard or not. Like, I don't know if this
Yeah.
is like every Hallmark movie, or is this bad compared to every Hallmark movie? I have no clue. Or is this like every Hallmark movie? And that one Hallmark movie I watched was actually just above and beyond better than most Hallmark movies. Because yeah, I remember watching it and thinking, yeah, this is not good, but there's something there that's entertaining me. Like I like the relationship enough in that last one. I wish I knew what the name of the thing was. This connection something, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, I'm just not the audience. But I'm glad we're getting more queer romance holiday
Yeah.
films. I want to see more of them because I don't want this to be the only one. I hope Hallmark does like 10 of them or even more, because then we can actually compare this to others.
And Danny brings up a good point. Danny says, yeah, quote, the gays don't need to see another disappointed parents story. And I do
Yeah.
appreciate that they didn't go that route. I think for me the challenge was is that there was just a lack of conflict in general. And as we're sitting here talking about this, Kat,
Mm.
we're kind of like, I think understandably railing on the film. And it makes me wonder, like, when we look at these films, are we do we inherently get more frustrated by films because we are in the creative field? Like, because I act, because you write, are the two of us more inclined to get more frustrated with these things? Or is this something that the average watcher watches and goes, wow, that was not great? Because on Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't have a lot of reviews yet, but it's got a 91%. Like, are we being overly, quote, harsh on this film? And is that okay?
I think we are because we don't like Hallmark. Not I don't know if it's our creative background, but I think we're just not the audience they're targeting. But I think
Mm,
the reason why it has a higher rating on Rotten Tomatoes or someone will love this is that it's something that's never happened to have a queer relationship in this context of Hallmark. I think it's just a big moment for a lot of people. Again, I hadn't watched the gay one, but I'm sure it's similar. It probably hits all the same beats, except it's between two men. So I think it's more the idea that this is different from other Hallmark movies because it's a queer relationship. So I think it's more people are excited about the stepping stone more than anything. And I'm guessing these people reviewing it are actually Hallmark heads, right? Like there's
mm.
people out there that are big Hallmark fans, and I'm sure people are
Yeah.
watching this, especially people are maybe not. Maybe someone found this just trying to figure out what people think about with this movie, and not actually are usual fans of the podcast. And I'm guessing this person who's listening, hello, they probably are Hallmark fans. So I think that's a
Yeah.
whole different route. Is like you can look at an Arrowverse show, right? If you guys don't know, we started out as a Legends of Tomorrow podcast. Like for some, people hate CW shows, but we're so used to CW shows and
That's
we
a good
grew up
point.
with them. So we're able to review them and enjoy them and understand what's a good CW show, what's a bad CW show. So I think that's the same context of Hallmark. Like people are watching Hallmark, they want to, they very enjoyed it. It's like HGTV, right? That's not for everybody, but there's people who are huge fans of HGTV. It's my parents also love HGTV because it's just simple. But is it good? No, it's the same thing over and over again. But people love it. They're
Yeah.
fans of the Property Brothers, you know.
Yeah. And Danny in the chat, thanks Danny, says to answer Kat, this is a pretty standard Hallmark Christmas movie. It's about it's that's about the quality of all their movies. And I do recognize that, maybe not recognize, but I don't know if this is bad. I often see and view Hallmark movies as stepping stones for a lot of creative people. This is maybe the first time that someone has acted in a film professionally. Maybe the first time someone wrote a film professionally, directed, sound edited, which is a whole nother thing. The sound editing in this movie, the music choices was pretty terrible
Hmm.
because it did not clear. There was no vision. There was one moment where they're definitely doing like a swing dance and like a really high beat dancing in the party scene, and the music is like straight up just slow acoustic guitar. And it doesn't fit at all. And it was driving me nuts because a little bit of a change in the music would have actually done a lot of good for the chemistry between these two characters. Danny says people who watch Hallmark movies know exactly what they're going into when they turn it on. And
Well,
maybe
that's
that's
why
where
my
you and I are
that's
missing.
yeah, and that's why my mom loves Hallmark because she's like, well, I know there's not a sad ending. I know it's really easy to watch. So I get again, just like I like watching food shows. I very
Yeah.
much enjoy that. And it's the same thing over and over again. You watch Hell's Kitchen season 1, you watch season 22, it's the same thing over and over again. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just like a comfort level. And I definitely get that. And I think that's why it's so hard to review a film like this, especially from our perspective, because like I'm not asking for highbrow. I'm not trying to put this up to the Academy Awards. I think we're both just trying to understand what we couldn't connect to. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think we just like a little bit more depth, and it's interesting because there's a lack of romance films in general. So these are the only ones we got. And that's why I think it makes it
queer
hard, because there's
romance
some great
films.
romance in general, all romance films. Think about romance films in the right now, currently. How many romance films are out there?
That's
Films,
because they're all in
movies.
books, Cat.
Well, I know, but we're talking about movies. There's
Yeah,
not a
that's true.
ton of them. So I think that's why we're a little bit hungry for it, because it's like, oh, it's been a
Yeah,
while since we've kind of gotten the rom com again. And there's obviously
true.
been some try movements of it, like Crazy Rich Asians from a few years ago, and now there's
Hmm.
that new Anybody But You movie coming out that's kind of has a lot of
Which looks
buzz. But
hilarious.
I want to see it.
I do want to
I'll
see it
see if
too.
we end up. We'll see if we end up
But
seeing it
that's
or
like
not.
definitive enemies to lovers. You can tell that right off the bat from the trailer. Like I think that nail on the head, that's what was missing in this film was any sort of coherent conflict, and without that there's no potential for growth or a movie with any sort of depth in general. And I feel like even when AI writes a Christmas movie, there is some sort of conflict, whether they're going to sell the hometown bakery to the big shot
Right.
lawyer, or
Or they
the
have to leave their
parents are unimpressed with their kids' inability to find a date for the holiday. At least there's some sort of conflict, and we just didn't have that in this film, and that
Well,
makes it
I
really hard to
think
connect.
what's interesting too is the ending, right? So the ending is the big decision that she has to go abroad to become a photographer. In the end, it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
she's only going to be gone for a month. We'll be fine. And that's
yeah.
even that could have been conflict of like, oh, well, I gotta leave. Would you leave with me to go away from New York? And then she kind of the lawyer decides, well, I'm going to do art law, and it's like, well, where did that come from?
I was like, girl, what? Yeah, it's not a. Danny says it's like a sappy fanfic of movies, but it's like a Danny. You can't tell me that this was a great sappy fanfic of movies, because like there's some pretty good quote bad fan fiction on
Sure.
Wattpad that you can read. But yeah, I think generally speaking, this is not a movie I would recommend. I rarely actually say don't watch a movie. I will tell you don't watch a movie, because even last year, remember we watched the Jess McCallan film. I
That was better.
don't remember a lot about that film, but I do remember that at least we understood that something was wrong. There was a
I remember
conflict
yeah, there was
and a
like a
potential for
plot.
growth. Yes.
And also she did a really good
The
job. I remember
plot,
that.
Cat
There was a
says.
plot, honestly. And again, I don't remember much about the film
I
either, but
don't
I do
either.
remember she like put a lot into it. Like I felt like she
Yes.
really did what she needed to. And also like
Mm-hmm.
they did the uptightness a little bit more. Like the beginning of this film, it was like, I'm uptight and I love my photography. I only like being a lawyer. And it's like a line. But in that movie, the Jess McCallan movie, I remember that was like the full movie that she
Yeah.
was very uptight.
Mm-hmm. You can't change someone's character in a week. And I think that was the other
Right.
problem is they're like, we're going to try to put all this together in a week. And if you wanted that to be the case, then there needed to be something else here. It was just a lot that was missing. So the only thing I did make a post-it note of things
Mm.
that I liked of the film. I did really like that they decided that she would have an old-fashioned dark room and that she would actually develop film. I thought that that was very clever. I thought her photo essay had some of the worst stock photos that I've ever seen. Her idea
Yeah, it
of
wasn't
like
very
the photo
artsy.
essay of like taking pictures of live in the moment experiencing joy, how cool. But when she's like revealing the photos, one photo is literally three of the characters smiling with a Christmas tree that has very clearly been photoshopped into the back. And I want to be like, girl, I respect the idea, but I would not have given you that grant to travel the world.
Well, but also like they're posing, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, these just feel like posed photos. It doesn't feel too artsy. Yeah, it's like it's hard because like how much money and how much time does this movie have to show artsy photography? Not much. And is it that important to this movie? Probably not. But yeah, of course you want to see maybe her be a good photographer. Danny says it wasn't great. Oh, there you go. But if you're queer, this is pretty much all we have. Well, that's yeah, that's definitely the issue is that there's
That's the
not
problem.
a ton out there, and that's why we love covering the queer films. But we've been doing this for so many years, and this is the third one we did because this is all that's new and that's out. I know there's a lesbian pregnant movie from Lifetime that just recently came out. So if you want us to review that, we'll do something about that. I think it almost is like a horror. Lifetime is so interesting. I like Lifetime a little bit more than Hallmark because Lifetime's off the rails. So I'll take over crumbs until we get better. No, yeah, for sure. This is the crumbs we get. But no, the thing I like a lot about Lifetime, I remember one night, me and my friends, we were trying to figure out like what movies do we want to collectively see. Let's like come up with a list. And we're going through like all the streaming services, and we found this like section of Lifetime movies, and it's just like girl beats up somebody and runs away and buries herself in the ground, something crazy
Oh.
like that. And every Lifetime movie, it's something wild, like climbs up a mountain, passes out, becomes a new person. Like it is wild plots. I'm like, I kind of like that because at least it's a little crazy. So I'm like, maybe the Lifetime pregnancy one will be a little better than.
I think Danny's point is sort of hits me in a frustrated way because we are taking for granted how we can get frustrated with poor filming, we can get frustrated with poor acting, but if you are a member of a community where you are desperate to see yourself represented, you might have to make do with the poor acting. You have to make do with the set design where people are slipping on fake grading in New York and Christmas trees that are not actually that heavy. Um, and I think that's really frustrating for that community. And I hope that if this is a stepping stone, if this is what gets people to say,
But then we just get
"Oh,
more
at least
Hallmark
we did
movies
it."
that are
Well,
just
yeah, but
like this.
maybe they can grow, and you never know. But I would love to see. I've gotten really into book talk. You guys know this over the last year and a half,
I was gonna
especially.
say got in. I feel like you've been in for
I've
a
been in
while.
it. But there are becoming more and more really, really spectacular romance novels that are stepping into the queer community or have been stepping into the queer community but are finally coming to light. And I hope that those are the stories that eventually get told because some of those are just built in truth. And I really do hope that members of this community get the opportunity to see themselves represented. And if this is what they have, like Danny said, we'll take the crumbs as we get, before we get better ones. But um, I wish that there were better ones available, and I wish that there were better options so that people, who watch Hallmark can say, hey, that was a great movie that just happened to have queer characters in it. This was a not great movie. And so I feel like that might be hard for some people to dissociate. This was a not great movie. Was that because there were queer characters in it? We don't see that, but I wonder if there is an aspect of individuals who might read into that way.
But
Does that make
you,
sense?
yeah, no, but you were talking about book talk and like books, like queer books that are becoming adapted, like Red, White, and Royal Blue, I think it was called. We
Yeah.
watched that a couple of months
Hugely
ago, and
successful.
yeah, and I feel like we didn't. It was like our favorite movie ever, but I feel like that achieved what it wanted to achieve in the
Yes.
vein it was going for. And
Yes.
I kind of wish that was this a little bit more, where it's like
Mhm.
the best version of that genre. Like I think that movie did a good job of what again it was just trying to achieve. And I think it was easier to review because it's like, yeah, is this the best movie of the year? No, but I had a fun time watching it because they had
Yeah.
good chemistry and they
There
had
was
horrible
honesty
green
in it.
screens, but you could look over it.
Yes, exactly. So, I
Danny's
think go ahead.
I was just gonna say Danny says Lifetime, where the women are either serial killers or victim of serial killers. There's
True.
something fun about that.
I sort of love that. Um, so is there anything else you want to say about this film?
No,
I think I
I
brought
just
up all my post-it notes.
I think we'll definitely try finding more queer romance films. Oh, I see you grinning, so I'm guessing you found another post
I
it.
do have a note that says dad chops good. And I realized that out of context that makes no sense. But I was noting that the dad was making dinner and he was chopping with really good knife technique.
Oh, okay.
And I was very impressed with that.
There was this moment where he talks about going away to see a friend for 2 weeks. I was like,
I thought
I
he was
don't
like
know where
cheating on the
that
mom or
came from.
something.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And then I find out, no, he's giving her space to write. I don't know, but that felt random.
And he's gonna go to Oxford? I don't that was again, let's just come up with a creative idea that's not that creative.
We got Danny says most queer ladies just watched the movie Carol based on the novel The Price of Salt for their holiday movie. Look, if you watched our top 5 Christmas movies, go check it out. But Carol was one of them. And me and Morgan just talked about like the movie's just about them staring at each other. It's not actually the greatest lesbian film ever, but it's what we got.
So I think that's gonna wrap up our conversation unless there's anything else that you want to
No,
add in. If any of our listeners watch this film and you have a deeply different opinion, please share it with us. You can reach us by email, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. Please contradict us. Please cite your sources. Tell us why you thought the redwood trees in the middle of Central Park worked for you. Whatever it is, let us know. We love being challenged. We love different perspectives. I love being here talking with Kat and talking with Danny in the chat because that gives me a different perspective as a person who identifies as straight watching this film. I'm going to view this in a different light than my co-host and our listeners. So contradict us. Tell us your own thoughts. If you think we're spot on, tell us that too. We do also like positive words of affirmation. But you can email us, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at The Legendary Ladies. We are also on Twitter, legends_podcast. Tell us your thoughts. Let us know what you'd like to have us watch in the future. Um, We've got some stuff going on with the podcast. We are going to be off next week, so we're going to be celebrating our holidays. So we will not be back until the week after
but
Christmas.
the topic we got, actually, we could probably, because I think we're definitely going to cover it. The topic we're going to be doing for the Legends fans, we're actually going to be reviewing Obliterated, the pilot for, we're doing a
Yes,
pilot pod for that. So look
the
forward.
Nick
That's with,
Zano
yeah,
movie,
show.
TV show. Yeah, and so remember, we're also on Patreon. Those of you who are patrons, you will notice I was not there for the top 5 Christmas films because I was on my Christmas vacation back home in Tennessee. So I
That
am
makes
going
it
to
sound
share.
like you're from Tennessee, but
I from Tennessee. But you know what was crazy? And maybe I'll tell this story. Like I'm gonna write up a whole Patreon thing about like my top Christmas films. But we straight up were like, for the first time in my life, very close to a genuinely scary tornado. It was
oh wow.
wild. I also got to go visit the Nashville Zoo, which has a wonderful gibbon and Andean bear habitat. I was very pleased. But if you're on Patreon, you can get all kinds of behind the scenes stuff. We're going to be modifying some of our levels soon to add some really cool new perks. One of the perks is you can join us live as we record, join in the conversation. Again, this is a wonderful way for listeners who are invested in what we want to talk about to actually be involved with us as we record the podcast. You also get to see the behind the scenes stuff, like some fun technical issues that happened at the beginning of this podcast that
That did
only
happen.
Danny got to see and no one
And
else
and
because we're
anyone
deleting
in
it.
that level though, because they'll still have the live
They'll,
thing, so you can see it
yep,
there. So
you guys
if
can
you
all
can
laugh
see
at
the
me.
live feed, you can see it still.
And it means you might get episodes early. So join us. It's patreon.com/the legendary ladies. You're going to see a theme here. If you are listening on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe on Stitcher. Subscribe on all of the things. We love to hear from listeners. Send us your thoughts, send us your feedback, but also support your legendary ladies like Kat, who I'm going to guess is currently doing a Kickstarter.
I do, but it ends tomorrow, and then in
Oh,
January we have a new one. So for
oh my God.
once, because of the holidays, we do have like 2 weeks off, so we'll be good for now. But the next show, I will have another Kickstarter
So,
promote, so look forward
Kat,
to
where
that.
can listeners find you online?
At Comic Uno is the best place to find me. So if you want comic stuff, it's mostly what I talk about over there. And sometimes I'll talk about a Lifetime movie. Probably not, but if you ask me about it, I'll talk about it.
And you all can find me on Instagram, Amy_hip. That's Amy_HYP. And that about does it for us on this podcast. Anything else you want to add in, Kat?
Nope,
All
just
right.
looking forward to the new year.
Oh, that's right. New Year's resolutions. Ooh, maybe we'll do a Patreon on New Year's resolutions because
Mm.
I do actually have one.
Okay.
That's very like a New Year's resolution that is very poignant and thoughtful.
Mm.
But I'm not going to tell you about it unless you're a patron. Then you might
There you go.
learn all about it. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you joining in for the conversation. Again, email us, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com, Instagram, tweet us, Patreon us. We'd love hearing from listeners. We hope you all have a wonderful, safe, and healthy holiday season. So thank you so much for joining us, and stay legendary.